Welcome to True Reddit Reads, where real stories are told in the voices of those who stayed silent for far too long. Today, you'll hear the story of a mother standing in the middle of a legal battle, fighting against a manipulative ex-husband and protecting her little daughter from psychological abuse and control. This isn't a story about ghosts or monsters. It's about fear betrayal and the strength to rise up, reclaim control over your life, and protect the ones you love most. Prepare yourself because what you're about to hear may leave you tense, heartbroken, but also filled with hope. Chapter 1. Entering the Courtroom. I walked into the courtroom with a heavy feeling pressing down on me. My heart was pounding, but not out of fear for myself. It was the dread of what my ex-husband would say about me in front of the judge. I was used to his lies. Throughout our marriage, he had always bent the truth to serve his own advantage. And now, he was preparing to twist our daughter's years of suffering into evidence that I was an incompetent mother. He stood at the witness stand, eyes brimming with tears, his voice trembling as he said, "I just want what's best for her." The judge looked at him as though beholding a saint. I stood there trying to remain calm, but every word he uttered tightened the grip around my chest. She came to me, filthy hungry after being with her mother. I have proof she's active on dating sites, and strange men often come to the apartment while Amelia is there. He gestured to his lawyer, and suddenly my medical records appeared on the screen, diagnoses of clinical depression anxiety. I just want to emphasize, he continued pointing at the documents, depression can make people neglect everything. The judge nodded seemingly in agreement, but then he went further, his eyes fixed on me. But depression doesn't excuse a monster. I froze, unable to form words. He began recounting how I had abused Amelia both physically and mentally, stressing that I had once locked her in a dark closet for hours. When the lawyer asked why he hadn't intervened, he snapped because she threatened to call the police if I tried to help her. Anger took over him. He shouted, his emotions spiraling out of control. The judge had to tell him to calm down, and he replied with an apology, claiming this was just his way of venting. Then came the most shocking blow. He broke down sobbing, asking for tissues to wipe his tears, and blurted out a confession that nearly made me collapse. I sold Amelia's body to men for money. His words left me stunned, but the nightmare didn't end there. As soon as my ex-husband stepped down, my daughter Amelia took the stand. She moved like a puppet, her voice stiff, repeating everything he had drilled into her. She said she had once prayed for her father to save her because she feared I would hurt her, and when asked if she loved me, she answered only that she was afraid. I looked at my ex-husband. He puffed out his chest, proud of his daughter's so-called bravery. But I knew the truth. Those words weren't born from Amelia's natural fear. They were the result of his manipulation and careful coaching. In that moment, I realized this battle would not only be about proving the truth. It would be a war of minds where every word, every piece of evidence, and every single action could alter the course of my daughter's life. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what lay ahead, or two, evidence and an unexpected ally, citer. After Amelia stepped down from the witness stand, the judge called for a recess to regain control of the situation. I stood there, my hands trembling, my mind spinning from everything that had just unfolded. My heart ached as I looked at my daughter, realizing that the fear she carried wasn't imagined. It was the result of being forced to recite words that weren't entirely her own. But I knew I couldn't rely on emotions alone. I needed evidence, photos, videos, messages, anything that could unravel the story my ex-husband had crafted. While I was lost in the tension, my lawyer reminded me of something that made me breathe a little easier. We have a crucial witness. That witness walked into the courtroom, and it was someone I never would have expected. It was Marcus's ex-girlfriend, the one who had witnessed firsthand the abuse he inflicted on our daughter at his house. The moment she stepped onto the stand, Marcus's expression changed instantly from confidence and staged tears to shock and dismay. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled, allowing her to testify. She pulled out her phone and began playing a series of videos. One showed Marcus screaming, hitting Amelia because she spilled juice. Another showed him coaching Amelia, drilling her to say things against me. There was even one where he forced her to cry, manufacturing fake evidence. Each video was like a puzzle piece, exposing the truth Marcus had desperately tried to bury. By the time the last video ended, Marcus completely lost control, shouting at her, "You're supposed to be on my side." Security had to step in, and the judge immediately called for another break. I drew a deep breath, realizing that the first real blow had landed in my favor. The evidence had laid bare his entire web of lies. When the trial resumed, the court reviewed everything in detail: the videos, the medical records, the witness statements. I could feel the tension in the air shift, but this time it leaned toward justice. I knew then that Amelia and I had found an unexpected ally, and that we were finally steering the case in the right direction toward truth and toward her safety. I held Amelia's hand tightly as I looked at her from across the room. The fear was still there in her eyes, but alongside it I saw a flicker of hope. The battle had only just begun, but now we had what we needed to fight back the truth, the evidence and the courage of a witness who refused to stay silent. Chapter 3: The Battle After Court and the Fear That Remains. The trial had ended, but I knew that winning in the courtroom didn't mean Amelia was safe. Even though Marcus's visitation rights had been restricted, he still found ways to manipulate and instill fear. As we stepped out of the courthouse, I held Amelia tightly in my arms. She trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of what she had just endured. I whispered to her, "I'll always be here. No one can hurt you anymore." But I also knew that words alone weren't enough to erase the terrifying memories Marcus had planted in her mind. Back at home, I began checking everything: the doors, the locks, the security cameras, anything that could protect us. Every sound outside made my heart jump. Amelia watched me with worried eyes, but I couldn't let her see my panic. I had to be strong, at least in front of her. The next day when I dropped Amelia off at school, I spotted Marcus near the gate, standing exactly 100 feet away, the precise limit of the restraining order. He stood there pretending to chat with other parents, but I recognized every gesture, every glance, as he searched for Amelia. My daughter looked back at him, forced a faint smile, then turned her face away. My chest tightened. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of another battle. During the following week, I started receiving messages from unknown numbers, photos of Amelia in public places, always from a distance that was technically legal, but close enough to terrify. Each message spiked my anxiety, but I knew I had to restrain myself. We couldn't react rashly. Every action could be twisted into evidence against me. So I began keeping a journal recording every detail of Marcus's appearances, every suspicious move. I created a folder to store all the evidence: photos, videos, text messages. Each one had a clear timestamp and location. I had to prove this was systematic harassment, not just coincidence. Amelia slowly started adapting to her new life, but I could see the shadow of fear still lingering inside her. At night, when she went to her room, I would sit beside her and gently ask about her day at school. She spoke in a soft, careful voice, as though afraid someone might be listening. I held her hand, reminding her, "You're safe. No one can scare you anymore." She looked at me, eyes still glistening with tears, but I saw a faint flicker of trust. At the same time, I began working closely with my lawyer, preparing for the next steps. The evidence presented in court was only the beginning. I knew Marcus wouldn't stop, and only meticulous preparation would keep us safe in the long run. Inside myself, I also had to learn control. Every day I forced myself to stay calm, for Amelia, for the law, for everyone watching. A single moment of lost composure could bring the whole plan crashing down, and I couldn't let that happen. Amelia needed me not just as her mother, but as her shield, her barrier against the hands that once hurt her. I took a deep breath, knowing this was only the first chapter of a long battle still ahead. Chapter 4: Life After Court and the Pieces That Remain. After the trial, we returned home with a feeling that was both relief and tension. Amelia still didn't fully believe that the danger was over. She moved carefully around the house, checking windows, locking doors, behaviors I knew were born from the fear that had taken root deep inside her. I watched her torn between heartbreak and determination. I had to help her heal while also protecting her from Marcus, who was still finding ways to manipulate from the shadows. Every morning as I drove Amelia to school, I stayed on edge, watching every movement around us. Marcus might stand far away, but his presence alone made my chest tighten. I noted every detail, his arrival time, where he stood, his gestures, anything that could prove a systematic pattern of stalking. Sometimes Amelia would glance at me, her eyes uncertain, and I would tell her, "I'm here. You're safe." But the truth was, I had to tell myself the same thing just to stay calm. At home, I began reorganizing our lives. I checked all the locks, installed new security cameras, set fresh passwords on devices Marcus once had access to. I stored all the evidence in separate folders, videos, photos, messages, and the detailed journal I kept. Every action, every sighting of Marcus, every sign of his intrusion was recorded meticulously. But safety wasn't only about physical measures. I had to rebuild Amelia's trust. At night, I would sit beside her asking about her school day, her friends, and the fears she still carried. She spoke in a soft, sometimes trembling voice. I held her hand and reminded her that everything was okay, that no one could scare her anymore. Each word, each small gesture was a way of showing her that her mother was here and would never leave her alone. At the same time, I had to maintain my own composure. Every call, every message from Marcus or from anyone connected to him could be either evidence or a legal trap. I trained myself to control my emotions, never overreacting in front of Amelia, in front of the law, or in front of others. A single moment of losing control could destroy everything we had fought for, and I couldn't let that happen. Life slowly began to settle, though the tension never fully left. School drop-offs, play dates, even simple trips to the grocery store became small tests of our safety and composure. Amelia started learning to recognize danger, though she was still too young to understand the full picture. I learned patience, resilience, and constant vigilance. Yet deep down, a fear lingered. Arcus was still her father. Even with limited visitation rights, he could still plant fear, still disturb Amelia's mind. I had to find a way to help her love, without fear, to respect her past, without being trapped in its pain. Together, we began rebuilding our lives step by step. Family meals became a new routine. Quiet evenings for talking and sharing replaced the constant pressure and conflict. Amelia focused on school, played with friends, and joined activities outside class without Marcus's tension looming over her. Each day was a step forward, small but meaningful. I knew that while the court had given us a victory, the journey of healing was far from over. Trust, safety, and the feeling of being loved would need to be rebuilt piece by piece. And I was determined Amelia would have a childhood that felt normal, one where her mother was her unshakable refuge, where the darkness of fear and manipulation no longer had a place. Chapter 5: Invisible Scars and the Journey of Healing. By day, I realized that the fear Amelia carried wasn't only from Marcus, but also from the years of manipulation and pressure she had endured. She had learned to stay silent sometimes, avoiding my gaze as if afraid that one wrong word might make me angry. At night, I would sit by her bed, gently asking about her day, her friends, and the feelings she still kept inside. Sometimes she said nothing, but I stayed patient, never pushing her to speak. I began writing down every detail about Amelia's habits, emotions, and reactions. From her meals, her study hours, to her playtime activities, I observed everything carefully. My goal wasn't only to protect her, but also to understand how the past and its fears continued to affect her mind. We rebuilt our family rules, but this time they were based on love and safety, not pressure or control. Dinner became a time to talk, share, and connect. We no longer brought up Marcus or the legal battles unless Amelia herself wanted to. Slowly, she began to smile more, join in games, and even ask me to do little things with her that she used to be too afraid to try. I also had to learn to balance protecting her without creating new pressure. Every decision, from letting her join extracurricular classes to going on outings with friends, was weighed carefully. I knew any mistake could make her feel unsafe, and I couldn't allow that. Alongside caring for Amelia, I had to face myself. Stress, sleepless nights, and a lingering sense of helplessness remained. I turned to support groups for parents who had been through abuse and complicated legal battles. Hearing others' stories reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my fears, frustrations, and exhaustion were valid. A major breakthrough came when Amelia began therapy sessions arranged by the court. She slowly learned to recognize her emotions, to distinguish between real fear and manipulated memories. These sessions were difficult for both of us. Each time she shared her fears or painful memories, my heart ached. But I knew it was a necessary step for her healing. Every small success was a victory. When she ate with more appetite, when she dared to talk with her friends, when she laughed freely, I could see the faint light breaking through the darkness of past years. Together, we were learning how to trust each other again. Life was still challenging, but I felt more grounded now. I had learned how to control my fear, manage the stress, and most importantly, ensure that Amelia felt safe. Each day we took small steps, rebuilding trust, confidence, and the sense of being loved. Amelia was no longer the frightened little girl haunted by her father's shadow and her mother's worry. She was slowly returning bit by bit to being herself, free, safe, and loved. I knew the road ahead was still long, but at least now we had begun walking it together. Chapter 6: Confronting Marcus and the Legal Aftermath. Time passed, but the tension Marcus created never truly eased. Every trip to school, every grocery run, even just stepping outside the house, I stayed on edge, scanning everything around me. Marcus still lingered in our lives, showing up in the right place, at the right time, just to remind us he was watching Amelia. I knew the restraining order only kept him 100 feet away, but it didn't stop the subtle gestures, the words that seeped into my daughter's mind. I began carefully planning every step: the school drop-off schedule, my work hour, shopping trips. Everything was calculated to minimize unnecessary contact with Marcus. Sometimes when I saw him, I had to fake composure, force a smile while my heart pounded. I studied every movement, every glance, and trained myself to anticipate what might happen next. The tension escalated when Marcus, through his lawyer, proposed temporary visitation terms. He requested supervised visitation at a therapy center and suggested dropping the charges against him. On the surface, it looked reasonable to the court, but I knew it was just another tactic, an attempt to manipulate public opinion and craft the image of a caring father while I was cast as the villain. I refused, and almost instantly, the story spread across social media. Parents at school who didn't know the truth started whispering, criticizing me. We weren't just fighting Marcus, we were fighting the entire system. Amelia's therapy schedule, medical appointments, stacks of legal documents, everything became an exhausting chain of battles. Even the people helping us sometimes felt pressured, torn between keeping their jobs safe and standing by our side. I realized that while Marcus manipulated from the sidelines, I had to stay clear-headed to protect my daughter. A crucial part of this fight was documenting everything, every message, every video of Marcus's behavior, every report from teachers and therapists. Each small piece of evidence became a brick in the wall of truth we were building. I learned to turn details that seemed insignificant into legal proof because I knew if I missed something, Marcus would twist it against us. Amelia's therapy sessions continued. I never forced her to talk about Marcus, but I encouraged her to share her feelings and experiences. The process was difficult and required immense patience. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she sat in silence for the whole session. But I was always beside her holding her hand, reminding her she was safe, that no one had the right to hurt her again. My time was consumed by legal work and meetings with lawyers. I learned how to handle paperwork, prepare evidence, answer the court's questions, all while keeping my composure. Every detail mattered because Marcus was always ready to exploit even the smallest mistake. Every small victory mattered. When the court accepted video evidence of Marcus coaching Amelia to lie, I knew we had gained solid legal ground. Those recordings not only proved his manipulation, but also revealed the calculated way he tried to control the narrative. Amid all this pressure, I learned to take care of myself too. Sleepless nights, stress, and legal burdens weighed heavily on me. But I knew that if I collapsed, Amelia would have no one left to protect her. I joined support groups, shared experiences, and learned from others who had survived similar battles. Slowly, we began restoring our rhythm of life. In the mornings, Amelia went to school peacefully. In the evenings, we had dinner, read books, told stories, building a safe space together. Little by little, she laughed, more joined in ordinary activities, and most importantly, started to believe she was safe. Chapter 6 closed with a profound realization: protecting Amelia wasn't only about fighting Marcus or navigating the legal system. It was also about helping her heal emotionally, teaching her to trust again, and rebuilding the childhood Marcus had tried to steal. I knew the road ahead would still be long, but at least we had made it past the most dangerous stage and had begun the real journey of healing. Chapter 7: Legal Strategy and the Decisive Moment. As the court date approached, the pressure reached its peak. I knew that even the smallest mistake could be exploited by Marcus. I spent hours rereading every email, every text message, every video clip of his behavior. Each tiny detail had become crucial evidence. I created a meticulous list, categorizing everything into physical evidence, electronic evidence, and witnesses, arranging it all like a military strategy. On the morning of the hearing, I woke before dawn, held Amelia's hand, and reminded her that today was important, but she was safe. My heart pounded as I saw Marcus walk into the courtroom. He straightened his suit jacket, forced a smile, and tried to project confidence with his eyes. I knew he was preparing to perform before the judge, before the public, painting himself as the misunderstood, perfect father. When the proceedings began, I held myself in absolute composure. My lawyer introduced the first video: Marcus instructing Amelia on what to say, when to cry, how to portray me as a terrible mother. The judge watched each clip intently, his expression stern. I could feel the weight of every second passing. Next came the testimony from the pediatrician and teachers, who had observed alarming changes in Amelia's behavior and health. Their reports were presented clearly with dates, places, and specific details. The bruises, the signs of anxiety, the teacher's notes, all connected into a pattern of systematic abuse. Marcus tried to argue back, but the videos and medical records were too convincing to dismiss. The most surprising blow was the testimony from Marcus's ex-girlfriend. She took the stand and described in detail what she had witnessed in his home, the forced rehearsals, the times he made Amelia lie to discredit me. When she played her own recordings, Marcus's mask fell: no more fake tears or proud expressions, only tension, anger, and frustration. The judge had to call a recess to allow Marcus to calm down, but I knew the momentum had shifted in my favor. When the session resumed, the court ordered Marcus to undergo a psychological evaluation and a parental capacity assessment. Amelia would continue trauma-focused therapy, with every emotional and behavioral response carefully documented. This was my chance to prove that, though Marcus was still her father, he posed a clear psychological and emotional danger. In the final ruling, the court granted me and Amelia's grandfather temporary custody under strict supervision. Marcus was ordered to complete mandatory therapy programs and attend safe parenting classes before visitation rights could even be reconsidered. It was a major step forward, not only protecting Amelia, but also leaving room, however slim, for Marcus to change in the future. As we left the courthouse, I hugged Amelia tightly. She trembled, but this time her eyes carried trust. I took a deep breath, realizing that while the legal battle was far from over, we had secured the most important victory, Amelia's safety and her trust in me. Chapter 7 closed with a mix of relief and tension. I knew the road ahead would still be long, filled with legal challenges, psychological struggles, and the slow rebuilding of a normal life. But this time, I felt stronger. This time, I believed we could move forward together step by step toward a safer, steadier future. Chapter 8: Healing and Building a New Life. As we stepped out of the courthouse, the feeling of relief mixed with tension still clung to me. Amelia clung tightly to my arm, trembling, but her eyes now shone with trust. She knew her mother would always protect her, and I knew the legal battle wasn't over yet, but we had already secured the most important thing, safety. When we returned, we began piecing together a new life. I rented a small apartment near my old workplace, one that was secure and stable for Amelia. She had her own room, for the first time chose the paint color herself, and covered the ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars. Small details, yes, but they gave her a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. I knew each of these choices carried enormous weight. Amelia was finally allowed to take control of her own life. School schedules, mealtimes, and playtime were set gently, without pressure, without commands. I arranged for her to attend therapy twice a week. Amelia began learning how to separate the fear from her past from the real safety of the present. In the first sessions were full of tears, but they also carried relief. She learned to speak her fears aloud, to name her pain, and to understand that what Marcus had done was never her fault. We reconnected with her old teachers, explained the situation, and received their support. They kept a close eye on her, helping her ease back into class. At first she was timid, avoiding her peers, but step by step she began joining extracurriculars, art club, light sports activities. Slowly, I saw her smile return, a smile I thought had been lost forever. I also learned to keep a careful balance. I monitored schedules, routines, her online accounts, and her communications. Marcus still existed out there, but under court supervision, every attempt at contact was now filtered. I had to find the line between protection and freedom, ensuring I didn't turn her life into a forbidden zone. At the same time, I had to heal myself. Months of relentless stress, tracking Marcus, handling legal battles, protecting my child, had drained me completely. I joined support groups for parents who had endured emotional abuse and custody struggles. Listening to their stories, sharing my fears, and receiving advice reminded me that I wasn't alone. Each small step became meaningful. Dinner with Amelia, reading books together, playing games, helping her with homework, ordinary moments, but to us they were priceless. Amelia was learning again how to trust, how to feel love without it being tied to fear or control. Life wasn't perfect, but it was finally something we could control. Marcus now had to complete therapy programs and safe parenting classes before visitation could even be reconsidered. I knew this would be a long process requiring patience, but I was ready. Amelia deserved every slow but steady step towards safety. Chapter 8 closed with the image of Amelia and me sitting side by side on the sofa, holding hands, gazing out the window. The late afternoon light streamed in, reminding us that although the darkness of the past still lingered, we had found a fragile peace, and that peace was the beginning of a new life, safer and more complete. And that was the story. A long journey from pain and panic to patience, protection, and finally healing. The mother learned that sometimes to protect your child, you have to be stronger than you ever thought possible. And Amelia, the little girl who endured the greatest trial of her young life, was at last safe, loved, and free to choose her own path. If this story moved You don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Reddit Reads so you won't miss the next True Reddit stories, where the truth is told in the voices of those who once stayed silent. And remember, sometimes the truth isn't just something to know, but something to use to protect yourself and the ones you love.